my channel started doing really well, and obviously I was doing the podcast with James, and it got to this point where Jack felt like I think that my heart wasn't in doing happy hour. I know people who have very normal falling outs, but because they got access to Twitter and Instagram and Twitch TV and a live streaming platform, it becomes something massive. And I've been there. I've done that. Like when the happy hour stuff, I went live because everybody's like, oh, yeah, you should stand up for yourself. And in reality, if I just sent him a text, it would have been sorted in about 5 minutes.
Well, now we're on that topic. What was the whole process of that? Obviously, you started when it started, didn't you? Happy hour? Or no?
Yeah, Jack called me and was like, I want a host or a podcast. I think it'd be really great because you know a lot about YouTube stuff and come on and talk about that. But also we could do something that isn't YouTube based like at all. And I was just like, yeah, if I was like, preferably, I don't want to talk about anything really YouTube related, but I was like, obviously it's what we do, so it's.
And that's how Meal Deals began.
Yeah, and then we moved entirely onto the Meal Deal only podcast. But yeah, it was one of those things where Jack was just like, oh, come do happy hour, and I was doing Campcast with James, and I was with James at the time, and I was like, yeah, as long as it's not like a permanent role, because also number one, I don't want to be the guy with so many podcasts, you know, because I hate that. I really do. I despise it. So it's one of those things where I was like, it's your thing, right? Like, it's your show.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, it's Jack's happy hour. And I went, great, that's fantastic, right? We do that. And then obviously we did loads of episodes, and then that just became, it was all over that fucking, the famous Ricky Gervais episode.
Yeah, you weren't on that episode, were you?
So what happened is I was told that his management only wanted, I think, one person on, I think, which was Jack, which I was like, yeah, I mean, this mainstream media, that kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
But then I was told by other people, I was like, they haven't said that.
Yeah, why would Ricky Gervais say, I only want one?
I don't think it was Ricky, I think it was
His management.
After that, what happened? What was the process?
Well, I think the issue was there was just a lot of people, because obviously there's a lot of, weirdly, as we talked about before, there's like a lot of rivalries, isn't there, really? And, you know, sometimes I suppose I don't really understand that necessarily, that, you know, that people benefit from other people not necessarily being able to do certain things. So I got like told basically by a bunch of people being like, oh, you shouldn't have that. You shouldn't, it's your podcast as much as it is anybody else's. But I didn't do anything about that because I was like, you know, we've been doing a podcast. I trust Jack, and we've spoken about it now. And you know, he was like, I'll send you the emails. I was like, I believe you. I don't need to see the emails from his management saying, you know, that come on or whatever. And we spoke about that on Happy Hour. We've already talked about all of this, so it's all like, done and dusted. But then what ended up happening was my channel started doing really well, and obviously I was doing the podcast with James, and it got to this point where Jack felt like I think that my heart wasn't in doing happy hour, and
Your heart
then
wasn't happy.
Also, yeah, you could say
sad.
I wasn't having a happy hour, and then you could, but then James was also having the same thing with the Cabcast because he was like so much a thing where James was like, oh, he only wants to do happy hour.
Yeah.
Jack was like, oh, he only wants to do the Campcast. Whereas I was always like, because it's me, my whole thing was like 2 different shows, you know. For me, it's like, you know, every meal isn't the same just because it's a meal, is it? Right? You know,
Every meal deal's different.
every meal
Yes,
deal is every meal. There's so many combinations.
And they can all be criticised.
So, you can hate all of them if you really want to. But for me, it was one of those things where I was just like, I'm just doing 2 different things. I still don't think it was a big deal. I remember we spoke about it on the thing, and I was like, I feel like I can do 2 different things at once.
Yeah.
But I think YouTube's one of those games where everybody always seems to be so on edge, sometimes for no reason. So
It's a stressful environment, isn't it?
it's so stressful. And this is like, you know, you got the e-boys stuff, and you got this. It's all just high pressure people who never really have ever had to work with anybody else.
Yeah.
And they don't know what to do. And everybody, because everybody portrays the narrative, I think, especially as commentary channels. We're all commentary channels. One of the things that everybody is always saying is, he's made his merch to make loads of money, and he doesn't care, or he's done this, he just doesn't care about people. And then people just start applying that blueprint to everybody at a certain point.
Yeah.
And in reality, it's probably that the 100 people you made videos on probably aren't like that at all. And that is really the real truth from it. But then it gets to the point where people start thinking, oh, Alex must not want to do one or the other. He must have a favourite.
Yeah.
And then it gets to the point where it goes, oh, well then, just don't come in this week. Or, oh, you're doing a happy hour, so do happy hour. We won't record today. And it got to the point where, in the end, I had no podcast.
Again.
like
back to square one again.
Loft all the Infinity Stones.
Back to nothing, you could say.
Yeah, you really could. Back to literally nothing. And that really stuck, because I remember my whole thing for the entire time, and I think almost what happened is that I was like, I was trying so hard to avoid that happening, but it almost just happened. Are
you okay?
You're right, mate.
I was just really
He's
good.
got a funny
shirt
shirt on. So, the end. So, when did you know it was the end of happy hour for you?
I got a WhatsApp from Jack, and I suppose if I'd have just said to him, oh no, it's fine, it wouldn't happen. But it got to the point where it was almost becoming like a weekly occurrence where Jack was going, if you don't want to do it, you don't have to do it. And I think it was from his paranoia.
Put it in your head kind of thing? Or
No, I didn't want to leave. I think he convinced himself that I had already left. So he was going, they were very nice messages. He wasn't like, didn't feel like he was being like, get out, forced me out the door. But it was like, oh man, you're doing all these other things, you don't have to come in this week.
You're a bit like Gareth Bale at Real Madrid.
Yeah, he was like going, you could sit on the bench if you want.
Play golf, do it.
Yeah. Just if you want to play golf this week, go play golf.
Yeah.
But I was like, no, I really would like to start in the Champions League final. But it got to the point where every week it was like, you don't want to come in. And I was like, no, I really enjoy it, Jack. I love it. I love the Weatherspoons.
I'm happy.
I love going to Weatherspoons afterwards. And but after about 4 weeks of that, I just went, hey, look, man, like, I won't come in anymore because I don't want. I could tell that it was becoming a problem, not just also for Jack to an extent, but also for James. And I was like, do you know what? I'd rather have no podcast and keep my mates than have 2 podcasts and everybody constantly be like, you don't want to be here, you don't want to be here, you're doing more of this, doing more of that, you won't have enough time for us. This was meant to be, and I was just like, I got so stressed out that when Jack was like, oh, you're doing so well, you can leave, I was thinking, I'm doing well enough where I can leave.
Yeah, so what was your mental state like during, so you've left happy hour, were you gutted?
Were you happy?
I was genuinely devastated. I was really unhappy when I left. I really enjoyed doing it.
Can you use a different word when we talk about the happy?
Sorry, I can't help it.
It's just in his heart.
It so works.
I was really unhappy when I left happy hour because it was. Didn't get paid to do it. Was never bothered about getting paid. It was always one of those things where I'm glad he's got the Spotify deal now because I kept on saying to Jack, I was like, there's money being siphoned off here, but it shouldn't be siphoned off. Like, you should be making a lot from this. And he deserves that. He's been working for so long. So it's one of those things where I always would bring it up, but it was never like, well, not getting paid or anything like that. And I was doing well on my own thing, so I wasn't necessarily fucking in need of getting any form of extra cash from happy hour or whatever. We did it for like 6 months, and I think I got maybe 200 quid. But that's because I just liked doing it. At the time, my main channel was getting so big that it was almost nerve-wracking doing commentary videos on there all the time. And happy hour was the one thing I could do every week where I was like, I didn't see Jack every day. Whereas with James see him every day, so it was always kind of high pressure working with your mates. Whereas with Jack, it was like that one thing a week where he just went on and it was just pure fun. Yeah. And until E-Boys podcast, I never managed to replace that with anything. There was never one thing that I could go, I would do this even if nobody watched it.
You said before about having, you'd rather keep your mates kind of thing.
Yeah.
Do you find, especially with YouTube, I just want to know that, do you find mixing like the business with friendship kind of thing sometimes becomes very complicated?
It's like fucking impossible, mate. Yeah. It's like the worst fucking thing ever. I generally despise it. It's why I haven't uploaded for a month and a half. Because fuck that. I don't want to be a YouTuber. It's one of those things where it's like, I just want to be able to go to the pub with my mates and feel like I'm at the pub with my mates. Yeah. Whereas, as I said before, like, for me, you can't say to somebody, I go and do happy hour because of the fact that I enjoy it. Everybody just thinks you go do happy hour because of the fact that you want more views and you want to be on every podcast you could be on. Yeah. So it's one of those things where it's like, I just started feeling a bit like I was a victim of my own work ethic to an extent, because I'll do a lot of work, and it got to the point where I felt like people were looking at me as if like he just wants to do everything and he wants to be doing this and all that, because of the fact that, you know, everything starts mixing and blends into one, and you've got YouTube and friends becomes one whole thing. And I was like, I don't know if people can look at me as a person or as a YouTuber. And it became pretty apparent that everybody was looking at me like a YouTuber. It was, you're doing so well. I used to hate that. Everybody would always say that. You don't need to do this. You're doing so well. You're doing so this. I was like, I'll just come on because I want to have fun. God damn it. I just want to have fun.